Welcome back to In His Steps Book Club. This week we have been reading chapter 4, 5 and 6. So chapter 4 throws us right back in with our chief news editor Harold and the continued effects of following in Jesus' steps. And he is getting backlash. Harold is experiencing this because the newspaper's biggest investor had pulled out and asked him, what new policy have you taken up? Stick to the modern ways that made it successful and let someone else do the reforming. But as Christians, it's our call to challenge modern ways and bring reformation to them until they are Christ-like. Is that what we do, church? Harold is undeterred. In fact, he took it further. The ads in his paper that he felt Jesus would not advertise in his paper, like alcohol and cigars, he took it out. This was the way of any other business. Ads were a large part of profit for the newspaper, but he wasn't asking what other businesses would do. He was asking, what would Jesus do? He continued further again by removing the Sunday edition newspaper. Harold was challenged by the special purpose of the Sabbath. This was a holy day committed to God alone. He refused to be part of the distraction to his workers and his readers to what the Bible has clearly set aside as a day to delight in God. At this moment in the book, I felt a little tap on the shoulder. How is your Sabbath looking? Is it another day of work, or is it set aside to delight in the life you've carved out in partnership with God, to delight in the world around you, and to delight in God himself? In chapter 5 and 6, we get to know our characters a little deeper and get in on their thought processes. We see the Reverend Maxwell come to his first challenge when he begins to realise that Jesus didn't just teach in church pulpits with refined sermons preaching to the choir, but that it was time to get out of the church building to the unchurched people, to bridge the gap and speak Jesus' name into the darkest areas in his community. We meet Alexander Powers, who starts a small meeting for the railroad men, but also discovers the railroad is involved in fraud. We see him easily do what Jesus would do in perhaps the smaller steps, but when it comes to the big leaps of following in Jesus' steps, we leave him in this chapter on his hands and knees as he fights within himself the option of wrongly keeping the secret or lose his job and income for his family. We get to know Virginia Page, the socialite who knows all the right people and has all the right things. The Serena van der Woodsen of New York, one might say it for a good pop culture reference. We see her argue with her family as she challenges their and their society's happiness and satisfaction. Year after year, eating and dressing and receiving and having a good time, and out of guilt, giving donations without any self-sacrifice. She expresses how she feels selfish and useless to the humanity that passes her house each day. This strongly reflects today's society where we invest money in homes and cars and clothes and make ourselves feel better by throwing a little donation to the food bank or to church. So basically this chapter suggests that I spend less money on ASOS and more in the Compassion charity shop in Balmoney. And finally, we follow Rachel Winslow, our incredibly talented church singer, as she decides to rival the acts of Jesus in using her gift for a greater good or gain public applause, reputation, fame, and a wad of money as a performing artist. We also see her getting proposed to in this chapter. Big week for Rachel. And yet we see her at each choice make the right one. She turned down the offer of the singing career to sing in the basic mission tent in her community. And because that guy who proposed wasn't following in Jesus' steps too, she told him to keep walking. So girl, if you need a sign from God, if he is the one or not, maybe this is it. The characters in the book continue to ask themselves, what would Jesus do, regardless to the results to me? This is a huge, massive question with huge, massive impact. So far, following in Jesus' steps doesn't seem like the best path to follow. These people were losing their reputation, jobs, security, money, opportunity, and relationships. So who wants to follow in Jesus' steps now? But we know that if it's not good, God isn't finished yet, and neither is this book. So get yours now at www.gpastors.co.uk/in his steps.